Hello and welcome to the Retirement and Money Show. So, I was recently talking through someone's retirement plans. They were 61 and they had £200,000 in their pension and they wanted to know if they could stop working and retire. The problem was the 6-year gap before the state pension kicked in, and they were terrified that they'd drained their pot before 67. So, we worked through the numbers together, and the good news is that they're actually now retired and they are drawing an income comfortably with their pot remaining stable. So if you're in a similar situation, you've got a pot saved up but you're not sure if it's enough to bridge your gap, well, this video is for you. Because if you get this wrong, you could run out of money years before you plan to. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly whether the £200,000 is enough to retire at 61. So I'm going to cover 4 key things. Number 1, the short answer, do I think you can actually do it? 2, the 6 conditions that I think can make it work. 3, the year-by-year maths showing how your pot needs to survive. And 4, a decision framework to allow you to test your own situation. So by the end, you'll know whether £200,000 is genuinely enough for you to retire at 61, and you'll understand exactly how the withdrawal maths works with regards to how you take money out of your pension pot over those 6 years, giving you a clear framework to hopefully apply to your own numbers. So my name's Zakir Hussain and I've got over 25 years experience advising people and helping them with their retirement planning. So we might as well just move straight into the key question. Is it enough to retire on? Well, I think so, yes. £200,000 can be enough to retire at 61, but only if you meet certain conditions. See, the reason most people think that they need more is because I think they're not always using the right numbers. So industry figures like the PLSA, who are the Pension and Lifetime Savings Association, say couples need £43,900 a year for a moderate retirement. And that sounds terrifying when you've got £200,000 and no state pension for 6 years. But in my opinion, those figures don't tell you the real truth. I think they're aspirational targets designed to make you save more, not what people actually need to spend. And I think they widely exaggerate what is actually needed in retirement. See, from what I've seen, most retired couples live comfortably on between £21,000 and £25,000 a year. Now, clearly, it's not an extravagant lifestyle, but it is relatively comfortable. And from 2026, the new state pension is expected to be around £12,500 per person, which if you're part of a couple is, well, it's going to get you to £25,000. So let me put that into perspective. As I said, the PLSA say you need £43,900 a year. But if you and your partner both get the full state pension, as I said, that's £25,000 covered automatically. And assuming you agree with the PLSA's figures, you only need to find £18,900 from your pot going forward. And most people don't actually spend anywhere near £43,900 in retirement. So the gap you need to bridge isn't really £43,900 for the 6 years. It's more likely £25,000 a year until state pension kicks in at 67. So the reality is that's £150,000 total over the 6 years, and you've actually got £200,000. So the maths actually do work, but only if you meet, I think, 6 specific conditions. Now, let me show you what exactly those conditions are. Let's just work our way through the 6 conditions that I think can make it work. So the first condition is you own your own home outright and you've got no mortgage or rent. So housing costs are, say, between £500 to £1,000 a month, and in some instances a lot more, would blow a hole straight through your budget. So if you're still paying a mortgage, you either need a bigger pot or a plan to clear it first. Number 2, you're a couple and you both get the full state pension. So that means 35 qualifying years of national insurance each. You see, a couple gets around £24,000 in 2025. That's head rising to just over £25,000 from April 2026. So if you're single, the math changes completely and you're going to get roughly half of that income. Third, you're generally happy living on £25,000 a year as a couple. As I said earlier, it's a moderate lifestyle. It's certainly not luxurious, but it is comfortable and will probably allow you to have the odd holiday. Number 4, you can access your pension now without penalties. See, at 61, you're above the current access age, which is 55, and although that is going to rise to 57 from 2028, so this shouldn't be a problem. Number 5, your pension is a defined contribution pot that you can draw down from flexibly. So if you've got a final salary scheme, they work completely differently, so those rules will not necessarily apply to this situation, but you will need to consider what pension you are entitled to from your final salary and when you can access it. And number 6, you're comfortable with some investment risk during retirement. You see, your pot needs to keep growing at around 4% a year to make the numbers work. Now, let me show you exactly how the year by year maths work. So let me show you how this can actually work for you year by year. So we're assuming that your pot grows at around 4% a year after you retire. So for me, that's a reasonable long-term average for a balanced pension investment in your retirement. So you start at 61 with £200,000 and you need £25,000 to live on. With flexible withdrawals, up to 25% of your pension pot is usually available to you tax-free overall, and your personal allowances cover most of the rest. So actually, tax is quite minimal during these years. So in year 1, you take your £25,000 and your pot drops to £175,000, but then it grows around 4% and adds roughly £7,000 back. So end of year 1, you've still got about £182,000 left. So by age 64, you're halfway through and you've taken £75,000 in total. So your pot is around £145,000, so you know it is still relatively healthy. And then at 67, when state pension starts, you've taken £150,000 over 6 years. So your pension pot has shrunk to roughly 115,000 to 120,000, but you know, still a decent chunk, and that's less than you started with. But here's the key part: from 67 onwards, you only need about £1,000 from your pot. Remember, your state pension will be just over £25,000, and in fact, it'll be a lot higher than that by the time you hit 67 if you are 61 today. So that's going to cover almost everything that you need. And at a 4% withdrawal rate, 115,000 still gives you over 25 years of top-up income as a minimum. So that takes you well into your late 80s or your early 90s. And the pot survives the high withdrawal years and then becomes almost untouched, giving you a lot of flexibility with how you then take out income through those periods when you are past 67. But what if your situation is slightly different? And that's what we need to look at next. So what I shared with you was just an example of how things can work, but here's how to work out if this applies to your particular situation. So the £200,000 figure works for couples with no housing costs and moderate spending. But if any of your conditions are different, you probably need to adjust these numbers. You see, if you're single, you're only going to get one state pension of around £12,500 a year from 2026, and that means your pot needs to cover a bigger gap for longer. You're probably going to need closer to £250,000 to £300,000 to make this work safely. And if you're still paying a rent or mortgage, well, you need to add to those costs maybe another £25,000. So even £500 in monthly housing costs adds £36,000 over those 6 years. But the reality is you're probably going to be paying a lot more than £500 a month depending on where you are in the country. So you need to flex those numbers accordingly. So all of a sudden your £200,000 suddenly becomes much, much tighter. And if you want a more comfortable lifestyle, at say £30,000 to £35,000 a year, the gap starts to widen significantly because you're now bridging £180,000 to £210,000 over 6 years and not the £150,000 that we started with. But the key question is this: what's the gap between what you'll spend and what the state pension provides? And multiply that gap, that yearly gap, by 6 and add a buffer for some investment wobbles, and essentially that is your target. So if £200,000 covers it with room to spare, you're probably going to be fine. However, if it's borderline, you might want to work another year or two or rethink some of your spending. And for me, the decision framework is actually quite simple. Know your spending, know your state pension, and calculate the gap. Now, as we move on, I'll give you some very specific action steps. Well, I'm going to share with you 5 key action steps that you need to take. So number 1 is to get your state pension forecast, and you can get that from gov.uk. And that's because you need to know exactly how much you're going to get and whether you have any gaps to fill. The reality is, and it's quite unfortunate, many people assume that they're going to get the full state pension when they retire, but the reality actually can be very different, certainly depending on what type of working habits you've had over your life. So do have a look. We have got other videos on this channel actually that do specifically look at entitlement to state pension. So I recommend you do have a watch of them as well. But understanding what your state pension is important, because this is essentially the foundation of all your planning. So I recommend that you do this first. Number 2 is to work out your realistic annual spending and do this as accurately as you can. Look at your bank statements for the last 12 months and just add everything up. Important thing is to be honest with yourself, because in my experience, most people underestimate what they actually spend. Number 3 is to check your pension pot value and confirm that you can actually access it flexibly. You can do this by logging into your pension provider's website or just give them a call to check your options. And remember, if you've got a final salary scheme, that works completely differently. But what you can do is you can ring up your pension administrator and talk to them about your plans, and they might be able to give you some options. So moving on, number 4, well, calculate your personal gap. That's spending minus state pension times 6 years. And if that number is comfortably below your pot size, well, I think you're probably in good shape. However, if it's close or above, you probably need to either reduce spending or delay retirement. And number 5, book a free pension rise appointment at moneyhelper.org.uk. It's a government-backed, impartial and free retirement advice service, and it covers all your options in detail. And this is essentially important if you're dealing with more than one pension. So, out of interest, what's the biggest thing holding you back from retiring at 61? Let me know in the comments. I'll be interested to know. Finally, if you want more information, you can visit our website at financialeducation.co.uk. That's where I break down all the options step by step. So I hope you did like the video and you found it helpful. If you did, please do give the video a like and do subscribe to our channel, where we have lots of content related to retirement planning. Finally, good luck and goodbye.